other day, I was looking at random pages on the Zelda wiki, as any normal person does with their free time, when I found a Zelda game I had never heard of before. The Legend of Zelda Flash Game. This is a big deal for me. As someone who spent most of their life obsessed with the Zelda franchise, it's been years since I found an official game I hadn't heard of. Looking at the article, there is not a lot of information here. There's a single line stating that it's a partially lost Zelda game made by Nintendo of America. There's a link to another page with a list of characters, none of which have any images, and there's a couple screenshots from the game. To be honest, I couldn't even tell if this was real at first until I looked at the single citation at the bottom of the page. A link to the archive of the official Zelda.com website. And checking out the archive, you can still play the game. Hello, I'm Sam, and this is the Zelda game you've never heard of. Starting off, this game has two screens. A little circle where gameplay occurs, and a rectangle where large chunks of text appear. According to Darunia here, our goal is to learn more about the Zelda universe and become a sage. Going into the gameplay circle, we start out in the middle of a dirt crossroad. You play as Link, or at least someone who looks like Link, who will automatically run after your mouse. Link will also automatically slice at trees and talk to NPCs when nearby. Talking to this person here, they can tell us a number of things, but the most important one is that we can become a citizen by heading over to the Temple of Time. So following their advice, we go east to the Temple of Time and meet Rauru. He tells us to become a sage we must go to the Acolyte Registry to sign up, and then take 8 quizzes to prove our knowledge of the 8 Zelda games released at the time. Unfortunately, since the game was released 2.5 decades ago now, we can't sign up and can't take any of the quizzes, making the Temple of Time all but useless. Heading south, we can find the Royal Academy. Outside there is an acolyte who apparently has completed 2 of the 8 quizzes. Heading into the main building, we meet Impa, who tells us about all the resources the Academy has to offer. We can download guides, check FAQs, or read walkthroughs. While the guides sadly don't work, most of the FAQs and walkthroughs still do. Walkthroughs are pretty standard tutorials for each game, with the Oracle games being restricted to 1 dungeon since they were new at the time and didn't want to give anything away. The FAQs are also pretty standard, just being questions about how to solve certain puzzles and asking about rumors like getting the Triforce and Ocarina of Time. I do have to point out this question from the Majora's Mask FAQ though. What is Tingle supposed to be? Quite simply, we just don't know. Interestingly, each of these walkthroughs and FAQs have a little intro written by characters from the Zelda series. The Maku Tree wrote the Oracle of Ages intros, Guru Guru wrote the Oracle of Seasons intros, Zelda wrote for Majora's Mask, Tingle wrote for Ocarina of Time, Navi wrote for Link's Awakening, Dampé wrote for Link to the Past, Rauru wrote for Zelda 2, and the Great Fairy of Courage from Majora's Mask wrote for Zelda 1. Weird how unfitting a lot of these are. Why not use Marin or Sahasrahla or the Old Man? Anyways, moving to the west, we find the town square and market. Outside the town square and market, there's a person who will tell us about the library to the north and a back alley where we can learn behind-the-scenes details. Walking into the town square, we meet the Bomber Gang leader Jim, who tells us about what we can do at this location. There's the Stockpot Inn, where acolytes could write interactive stories, but sadly we can't access it anymore. Next is the Hyrule message board, which at the time of this archive hadn't been up and running yet, but I imagine even if it was running at the time, it wouldn't work now. There's a newsstand where you can read about the release of the Oracle games, and a place called the In-Store, which is just a promo for the main Nintendo website, and a website where you can find retailers that sell Nintendo. Getting into more interesting stuff, there's this tent with info about a sweepstakes. From this picture, it seems that the winner would have gotten a translucent green N64 and Game Boy, an SNES with Mario RPGs, and copies of Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Link's Awakening, and Link to the Past. There were also 10 runner-ups who would have gotten a Majora's Mask baseball hat. If I was a kid, I'd be a bit disappointed, but these things are going for $200 on eBay now, so I guess it's not that bad a prize. Finally, for the town square and market, there's the back alley, which pretty much acts like its own mini area. There's a timeline of Zelda release dates, links to other sites, and a couple of interviews. Sadly, half the interviews are broken, but the Majora's Mask interview and the Oracle game interviews are still up. I'd give them a read if you're interested. The Oracle Games one is especially funny, with the interview starting out by asking the developers how they stay in shape. Anyways, heading north we reach the final area, the library. Run by Keiporage Bora, this place is all about Zelda lore. There's the Hall of History, which is descriptions of all the game's plots, the Hall of Knowledge, which is an encyclopedia of items, characters, areas, and enemies from the games, and finally the Hall of Time, which details the timeline. A lot of this stuff is inaccurate, especially nowadays, but it's still a fun read. In particular, the timeline is terrible even for the decade it was released in. Firstly, they assume every Link is the same, and that hasn't been the case since Link to the Past. Secondly, they completely ignored the backstory of Zelda 2, instead stating that Zelda was put to sleep in between games. Thirdly, they just ignore the imprisoning war and how it's supposed to take place in a separate timeline from Majora's Mask. And there's more, like having Link's Awakening take place during Zelda 2 when it's implied to take place on Link's trip back from the Oracle games. The funniest part, Kporage Bora says, and I quote, "Except for a few dissenters, most citizens of Hyrule agree that our timeline is precise and reliable." Sure it is, Kporage Bora, sure it is. And that was the Zelda Flash game. Not anything huge, but it's a neat piece of Zelda history I haven't heard anyone talk about before. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and if you want more Zelda and Nintendo content, consider subscribing. Either way, stay hydrated and I'll see you next time. Bye!